What's up, YouTube? It's been a minute, been a little busy, but let's get at it. So for the past, year and a half, and recently I just put a poll up, and I had always thought, like, especially, I think it was like a year and a half ago or something like that when Canelo had all those fights in a row and he was just sweeping through everybody. I was like, who in my era would have been able to beat Canelo convincingly? And the first person that came to mind was James Lights Out Toney. And I'm talking about he's like one of my favorite boxers. He's on my pound for pound list right behind Roy Jones. And yeah, so let's talk about James Toney a little bit. So at 5'10" with a 72-inch reach, he started out at middleweight, went all the way up to heavyweight. I'm talking about beating uh, John Ruiz, TKO and Evander Holyfield. He fought everybody, literally, he fought everybody. Barkley, the list goes on. And at one point in his career, he had only had 4 losses. Right now, his record stands at he has 92 total fights, 77 wins, 47 by knockout, 10 losses, 3 draws, and 2 no contests. But there was one point in time, and I forget how old I was. I was probably like 16 or something, where he only had 4 losses. Or I was actually 23. I'm sorry, but he had 4 losses on his career, on his record. And he used to always say, "I'm James Lights Out Toney. I'm undefeated with 4 losses." And I used to love that because nobody has ever finished him. Nobody's ever came close to finishing him. That knockdown between him and Roy Jones was more off balance. I don't care what y'all say. You can rewind and go look at it. But he took Roy Jones to the distance, and nobody had done that yet. But at that point, even when he moved up to heavyweight, he was fighting like Samuel Peter, who he lost to once, but had a split decision first. And the other one, I don't know. I just think very highly of James Toney because of how he came up and how he's fearless and didn't care, and his defense is so technically sound. I think he does a shoulder roll, the Philly shell, way better than Mayweather. He has the thing is he had the power behind it. He just didn't have that. I'll tag you, do the shoulder roll, tag you, the Philly shell, tag you. No, when he countered, there's power behind it. You know what I mean? That's why he has all of those knockouts, and that's why I would favor him over Canelo. Naturally, Canelo is a smaller guy. Canelo, yes, started out at welterweight, moved up to you know light heavyweight, but he's just a smaller guy, and I think that would come into play. And I think James Toney beats any active fighter, not just Canelo, but any active fighter right now. I'm talking about Triple G when he was in his prime. I'm talking about Charlo Benavidez, of course, Canelo, Andrade, all those guys. He was able to adapt and make changes in the ring that, like nothing, and he would figure things out and he would make it happen, and say he did lose to one of these active guys, nobody would finish him. I guarantee you that. But one fight that stands out to me was I was 23 years old, and it was for the vacant IBF heavyweight title against how you say his name, Vasily Zhirov, and nobody expected James Toney to win. They were talking about this, Kazakhstan guy getting dropped out of planes and having sharks chase him, for his endurance and his adrenaline, and he just doesn't stop and blah blah blah. James took it to him. James Toney fought him like crazy. It was a war, and he ended up knocking him down too. Like later in the fight, I think it was like it was in the championship rounds when he knocked him down. and ended up winning the unanimous decision. So I think very highly of James Toney. I think he is one of the best ever. And like I say, he's on my pound for pound list and will always be on there. And I think he's probably one of the best boxers, most underrated boxers ever. I mean, the dude is amazing and he's mean. Those old school boxers don't play with him. I'm an 80s baby, so I grew up watching these dudes and they did not play around and they fought everybody and anybody at any weight. So now let's talk a little bit about Canelo Alvarez, okay? He, unlike James Toney, he started off a little lighter because he is the smaller guy. He started out at welterweight, then went to light middleweight, and then the middleweight, super middleweight, and then the light heavyweight where he won a little bit, and then he of course lost to Bivol. But he at 5'8" and a half with a 70 and a half inch reach, James Toney has the advantage in both of those categories. He's just the bigger guy. And the thing you have to think about is yes, Canelo was very successful and was sweeping through the competition. And even though he was a smaller guy and wanted to try light heavyweight, and was successful a little bit at light heavyweight, he never went, he could never go to heavyweight. And the thing is, James Toney wasn't that much bigger. Like James Toney was only 5'10", and he went all the way up to heavyweight, the heaviest weight, where he looked like he was out of shape. And he was so good he might have even been a little out of shape when he lost some of those decisions, but just his willpower and his determination and how mean he was, he just didn't give up. And that's what I loved about him so much. Canelo is a great counterpuncher, um, and he's not very heavy on the jab. He has a lot of power. I wonder if he would try hitting and beating up on James Toney's arms and hips to slow him down. But even then, I don't know if that would hurt James Toney because James Toney just doesn't care. Just like Bivol didn't care with arm punches. It does help against some people, but and Canelo does have power, but does he have enough power to hurt James Toney's arms to make James Toney stop punching? James Toney was hard to hit. The way he ducked below the waist, and not below the waist, but the way he ducked down, not below the waist, unlike Haney, but the way he ducked down, ducked his head, and then of course his Philly shell and his shoulder roll, his counter punching. I think he would outbox Canelo, and I think out of anybody, he would be the one to finish Canelo. Like he would TKO or knock him out. I mean, Canelo does have very good reflexes and maybe able to roll with some of those punches, but the way James Toney counters, I think he would connect solid, a lot more solid than anybody has yet. And I don't know, it's just, I think very highly of James Toney, and I think the size difference will come into play, and the power advantage goes to James Toney. Size goes to James Toney. Experience goes to James Toney. Defense goes to James Toney. Canelo has that one style and sticks with it. Hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Same thing with James Toney. He has that one style and he sticks with it. So now it comes down to Canelo style versus James Toney style. They're not going to change up for each other. They're just going to come at each other and fight. And I have always thought that James Toney was the superior boxer. Um, Keep in mind, Canelo just straight turned pro when he was whenever he was a kid. Still, when he went pro, he didn't even do amateurs. James Toney was an actual, did amateurs and pro. And I think Canelo's at 61 fights, which is close to what James Toney had. He had 77 fights, something like that. But regardless of the experience, I'll go ahead and cut this short. But I really do think that James Toney would be the one to beat and finish Canelo Alvarez. And I know that sounds bad because, I got to stick with my Mexican fighters. And of course, I love Canelo, but I got to keep it real. James Toney is a monster. I even named two of my dogs after James Toney. That's how much of a favorite fighter he is to me. I had named one of my dogs JT, and the other one James T as well, after the other one passed away. But James Toney's defense and his counterpunching and his jab, he used it all, and he was very hard to hit. So yeah, let me know what y'all think in the comments. Click like, subscribe. I answer all comments. Let's get some boxing discussion going on, and I want to know what y'all think with a dream matchup between James Toney and Canelo.
I'm Magno TV. Click like and subscribe.